his wife won't let him get an exposed tattoo. You're listening to Game Points with Matthew Ross on TSN 690.
Lengthy review in Minnesota, 33.9 seconds left. They thought it was goal. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Officially, no goal. Minnesota still trying to tie it up against Dallas in the final moment and playing for their playoff lives. It's Game Points with Matthew Ross. We're here till 7 o'clock. Mo Khan in studio, Jimmy G as well, Dave Trentadue helping us out. And we'll talk to Dave Simon momentarily here. Just a quick hello to Cheeseburger Mobile. If you're looking to throw a party and you want old school style burgers, high quality though, we're talking onion rings, French fries. You could even have a poutine bar driven up to your corporate party or private party. Look no further than Cheeseburger Mobile, 514-512-1328, 514-512-1328, or email cheeseburgermontreal@gmail.com, C-H-E-E Burger Montreal @gmail.com. New this year, Cheeseburger, by the way, is located throughout the summer, spring and summer, already open in Bellevue Park in Pincourt between 11 a.m. and 8 p.m., and they deliver between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. So if you're in Vaudreuil, Île-Perrot, Saint-Lazare, Saint-Anne-de-Bellevue, you got to check out Cheeseburger, and they've just gotten on the Just Eat network as well. Check out their smoked meat poutines as well. The owner's choice, Swiss chopped garlic and pickles with smoked meat. Unbelievable. Cheeseburger Pincourt on Facebook.com/Cheeseburger Pincourt if you want to see pictures. All right, let's talk some UFC with our next guest. Mr. Dave Simon is here in studio. You can hear his show, of course, Friday night on TSN 690 late night. RingsideReport.net is the website if you want to check out previous episodes, and Wrestling Uncensored late nights on Saturday as well for WWE and wrestling content. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing fantastic.
Good to. It's been a while. Been a while since we've had you here in studio.
Yeah, man, too long.
Dave Simon MMA, by the way, on Twitter as well. Dave, whole lot going on. Amateurs like myself who don't follow UFC as closely as you do, I just feel like there's a huge amount of buzz, and you and I were talking off air, and we kind of chalked it up to the fact that all the buzz is surrounding the biggest names in the last 5, 6, 7 years in UFC, and that's why even the mainstream is covering it so incredibly well, talking about Ewan McGregor,
Conor
GSP.
McGregor. Ewan McGregor's an actor.
The actor Ewan McGregor. Very, very tough guy as well, yes. Conor McGregor from Ireland, of course. Yeah. GSP, Jon Jones returned last night. Where do you want to start, Dave? So much to talk about.
Well, we can start, I guess, with what happened last night. Jon Jones coming back. It's been a long time since we've seen Jon Jones.
A win is a win, but not as impressive.
He didn't look great last night. He looked, okay. He did good enough against Ove St. Preux to get the victory, 50-45, winning all 5 rounds. OSP really offered very little to the fight.
Taking it on short notice, though, as well.
He took it on short notice, but I think that a lot of people blaming Jon Jones for not looking great. OSP just wasn't very aggressive, and sometimes when you have a fighter on the defensive, there's very little you can do because it doesn't give you any openings to strike. So he didn't do great, Jon Jones, but, ring rust and different things, but also the opponent, I think, had a lot to do with the fight being kind of a lackluster main event.
All right, so Jon Jones, pound for pound, many thought when he last fought that he was, the greatest fighter in UFC, mixed martial arts. He's back. He won last night, got an interim belt. He's not really interested in that interim belt. He wants his old belt back.
Yeah, he wants to fight Daniel Cormier, who, in the meantime fought a couple times and became the new UFC light heavyweight champion after Jones was stripped of the belt. He never lost it. Most people still consider him the champion, the number 1 205-pounder in the world. And Daniel Cormier says he's going to have to check with his doctor Monday, see how he's doing as far as his injury that kept him out of the fight last night. They were actually supposed to fight last night, and it was a knee injury. It was like a strain, so he's going to go see if he's doing all right. And if he is, then they're going to fight July 9th in the new main event of UFC 200. They both want to fight on that big UFC card that Conor McGregor was supposed to main event, but he got pulled this week.
So both Conor and Ewan McGregor not fighting in UFC 200.
I don't think Ewan McGregor ever fought, to be honest.
So let's get into that. Obviously, Conor McGregor, everyone knows the story by now, was supposed to be the guy in UFC 200, didn't want to do some of the promotional events, gets pulled. I don't want to talk about the retirement stuff because that was nonsense. So
yeah, he's not retiring.
No. So do you agree with what Dana White did here? And moving forward, how do they mend this relationship? He doesn't want to come across the pond and do some of the promoing, but at the same time, he feels like he's owed a little bit because of where he took the sport.
His name alone just generates so much buzz. And Dana said, well, it wasn't fair that Conor didn't make the trip and all these other people made the trip for the press conference. None of those people generate the buzz that Conor McGregor does. Nate Diaz could fight a bunch of people in the UFC, but he doesn't want to fight them because he knows the big payday is to fight Conor. I don't really agree with what Dana did and what the UFC is doing. I think that it's a power move on their part. They want to make sure they can keep everybody in line, and they're keeping Conor out of a fight that he wants to have, that he's not injured for, that he's training for, that Nate Diaz wants. And if we want to see Nate Diaz on UFC 200, he's going to have to fight Conor McGregor. Both guys want to see the fight. The fans want to see the fight. But the UFC isn't giving it to us because Conor didn't make a press conference. Doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Could he not have done like a Skype or something like that?
He could have. He could have done a number of things. But the UFC wanted him to travel and be on that stage. And he didn't want to do it.
Game Points with Matthew Ross here on TSN 690. We're talking UFC with Dave Simon of Ringside Report Friday nights on TSN 690. Dave, how do they mend this fence? I mean, if he's stubborn and doesn't want to cross the pond and he wants to stay in Ireland to train, which obviously is his prerogative, and the UFC wants him to do these things, are we left with a situation where he'll only fight if UFC has a European kind of event, or how are they going to get over this? Like you said to me earlier, he's got a multi-fight deal with the UFC.
Yeah, he can't fight anywhere but the UFC. He can say he retires and all he wants, but he can't leave the octagon if he wants to fight mixed martial arts. And I think it's going to be a tough deal with the UFC figuring out what fight to do with Conor. Dana has already said that Conor won't fight Nate Diaz. He'll fight the winner of Frankie Edgar, Jose Aldo, who are fighting for an interim featherweight championship. We can't forget that Conor's actually the featherweight champion, which is at 145 pounds. And the UFC says he's going to fight for that title next, despite the fact that Conor lost to Nate Diaz in his last fight and really wanted a rematch with Nate. And apparently it's because of Conor that they were doing that fight, because he demanded the Nate Diaz fight. They said, okay, Conor, we're going to give it to you. But now they're saying they don't want to give him the fight that he wants. So that could be a problem in getting him back into the octagon. I think that they're going to deal with a number of hurdles. And it's really unfortunate that they won't just let him fight at 200 and get it over with.
In terms of anything else on that card last night that, actually in the ring or in the cage or in the octagon, whatever you want to call it, what would impress you last night the most?
You got to give it to Demetrius Johnson. I think he was the most impressive on that whole card. He's the flyweight champion in the co-main event. A first-round TKO of Henry Cejudo. And this guy, Henry Cejudo, was very legitimate. He was an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling. Came in highly touted, undefeated.
I heard you and your co-host Fred on the Ringside Report kind of hyping this fight, talking about how good this fight was going to be, and I can't remember who took the side of, you're right, the medalist, but saying that he has a legitimate shot.
Yeah, he really did, and Demetrius Johnson made it look like he really didn't. Finished him in the first round, his 8th title defense. He's trying to break the record, which is held by Anderson Silva with 10. And I think he's going to do it. There's really nobody in the flyweight division that can touch Demetrius Johnson. He's so far ahead of the pack. And skill-wise, there's really nobody like him. He is unreal. Everything he does is perfect. He has perfect technique in every aspect of the game. He really is amazing to watch. People want to see him fight Dominic Cruz, the bantamweight champion, see him jump up 10 pounds and fight a champion, up a weight class. But I think Demetrius, from what he was saying last night at the press conference, wants to stick around and keep defending that flyweight title. he is very impressive.
Just wrapping up with Dave Simon of Ringside Report Radio on TSN 690, late nights on Friday night. RingsideReport.net's the website. Dave, before you go, what is the latest on GSP and whether we'll see him or not soon?
Well, it's a financial thing right now. It's a deal where George has a contract with Under Armour to wear their stuff, and the UFC, since George has been gone almost 3 years now, has signed a deal with Reebok. So everybody in the UFC has to wear the Reebok shorts, the Reebok shirt, the Reebok hoodie on the way to the octagon, and that is the big hurdle right now for the UFC and George. George wants Under Armour, UFC has Reebok, and they're trying to figure out a way to compensate George financially so that he makes the same, if not more money, than he would with the Under Armour deal that he had before.
So do you think it'll get done? We'll see him soon?
Yeah, I think so. I think George wants to fight bad enough, and the UFC wants him bad enough, especially now with all these Conor McGregor problems. They're going to want to maybe give in a little bit to George and let him have his way. I would. If I were the UFC, George St. Pierre coming back would be huge business for them. You don't know what Conor's future is, really. He's proven to be unpredictable. Ronda Rousey, who knows how much she has left in the tank, so to get a guy like George St. Pierre back right now would be just huge for their business. I think they're going to get him back, and maybe it'll take place November. That's kind of the rumor right now, that November, when the UFC debuts at Madison Square Garden, that would be a good time to bring in George St. Pierre.
Wow, yeah, that would be. Dave Simon MMA on Twitter, if you want to follow him there. RingsideReport.net is the website, so check out the latest shows or post there, or you can listen live on late night on Friday nights. Late night Saturday night here on TSN 690 is Wrestling Uncensored, if you're a wrestling fan. Dave, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
No, thank you, Dave.
No, thank you. Thank you, Jimmy G.
Thank Mo as well. Mo did a lot there.
I don't think Mo did much there.
I was informing Jimmy G some updates in the world of sports, actually.
Oh, Jimmy G, you're slacking.
That never happens. It's Game Points on TSN 690. We're here till 7 o'clock. Up next here on the program, we talk a little MLB. Dave Trentadue gives us his stories from around MLB. That's next.